What is up, my peeps? Joshua Smith with another GSD mode interview every single week. We interview top entrepreneurs and just straight up top badasses out there dominating their space. These are people that choose to not live a life of mediocrity, but instead to go out there and create amazing, epic lives for themselves and their family. So you guys, today we got a special guest on the show today. This is an entrepreneur, international wellness expert, chiropractor, Dr. Laurence Tham on the show. Welcome to the show, my friend.
Hey man, it's great to be here. Thank you so much for having me. And I know we're a day apart, but hey man, this is what technology does, right?
Yeah, no, I love it, dude. I love it, man. So I'm really excited to have you on, because you're a chiropractor. You're deep into the health and fitness space, but you've also really taken off as an entrepreneur. You're not just a practicing doctor at this point. Now you're out there consulting other chiropractors, other doctors, of building their practice, and so I'm really excited to get into what you're doing today and what that journey was, but. Before we jump into that, I'm really interested in how the journey began. Like, if we rewind the clocks, whether it's, high school, college, at what point did your entrepreneur journey start in your life?
And one of the things is that when I was a kid, when I was a teenager, I was trying to figure out what I wanted to do. This is, what everybody does, right? As a teenager, you're bogged down. You have to choose your course or choose the university and what course to take. And I didn't know what I wanted to do. All I knew was I was interested in sports. And number two, I really wanted to help people. So I thought, a physiotherapist would be perfect. I didn't get in. I think in Toronto, I'm born in Canada, and one of the key things was I think we needed like a 97% or something crazy like that. And I didn't get in. So I actually studied something called kinesiology, which is about basically human movement at the University of Waterloo. I just went on to study some ergonomic stuff, but something just didn't hit right. It just didn't feel right. And I've always wanted to become a doctor, but not a medical doctor, because my mom was a foot reflexologist, and she's always kind of had this alternative health type of slant since I was a little boy. And so I thought, and then I think I went to see a chiropractor, and I went, this seems right. We get to help people. They seem to help a lot of people in sports. And so I thought, this is it. So I went into chiropractic. And when I actually got into chiropractic, I realized it was a completely different viewpoint of what I thought chiropractic was. Most people think chiropractors are, headaches, back pain, and so on and so forth. But it was so much more than that. It was so much more than that. It really, if you look at chiropractic, part of it can be very, very vitalistic. It's about looking at the body from within and actually helping the body help it heal itself. And that really kind of turned me on in terms of what I wanted to do. So fast forward a few years, became a chiropractor. I moved to Australia, started practicing here about 14 years ago. And, like any entrepreneur, though, we get bored very easily. We have this like ADD where you get to this point of like you focus, you do things for a few years, and then you dabble into something else. And, in practice, I was, seeing patients and had a very, very busy practice, but I got bored and I wanted to help more people. And that's when, this is about 5 years ago, I discovered this thing called podcast. And I listened to these two guys. Actually, it was I Love Marketing by Joe Polish and Dean Jackson. They just started a podcast 3 months in. I thought, if these two guys can actually talk on a podcast, I can do this. So I just threw the idea out there with my buddies, a couple of chiropractors, Brett Hill and Damien Christoph. And we just decided to record. And we just started shooting episode number 1. And 5 years later, 270 episodes or whatever it has been, every single week, we've just been broadcasting the Wellness Guys show. And that's how we got started. And then we decided to, one more story about that is that we created this thing called the Wellness Couch, which is now 20 plus podcast shows on it. So we got a variety of different speakers, a variety of different podcasters, and the other podcast that I run now is called Inside the Champion's Mind, which really focus a lot of the mindset of how to, live a daily life with, really intention and stop being mediocre in what you do.
Yeah, I love it, man. So let's rewind the clocks though back to when you were starting your chiropractic practice, if you will. Because so often we jump into entrepreneurship, or not entrepreneurship, but you jump into your craft and you think, okay, hey man, I'm gonna be here. I'm gonna do my chiropractor duties, if you will, that you got to do, and then you realize, okay, well now I got to market, I got to get patients, I got to follow up, I got to manage billing. You're wearing a lot of different hats than you ever fathomed you had to wear, and the stats are 80% of entrepreneurs drop out in the first 5 years, and you're 6 to 10, another 80% drop out. So when you jumped in, what were some of those initial obstacles that you never would have fathomed would have happened, but they became big obstacles that you had to overcome?
Well, listen, as a chiropractor, I went through 8 years of university. So I was graduated at 27. You're thinking after that, you've been in school for what, 22 years of your life. You think, man, I don't have to go to school. Like, I got my degree, I got my doctorate of chiropractic, don't have to do anything anymore. I just got to open my practice and people will flood. And that's what the mentality of a lot of people, not even just in chiropractic, and a lot of people who come out with a degree or go into a business, is that they just expect, oh, I got this idea, people are going to flock to it. That was a massive mistake. That was a big realization for me pretty much in the first month. It just hit me right in the head and going, hey, you got work to do. Like, this is like another university now, another level of education that I had to learn. I had to learn about the marketing. Like in today's world, you have to be a social media expert. You have to be, the chiropractor or whatever the entrepreneur is. And you also got to be a great marketer at the same time. And marketing is not about selling. See, people have this massive thing about selling. You're not selling anything like other than you yourself. You got to be able to have the confidence and also have that desire to actually know your product so well and your services, and you believe in it, that people are going to be attracted to it. But there's a skill set. I always think about there's a science to it. Someone can teach you the exact science on how to do it, but then there's the art, right? It's like podcasting, right? There's a science of actually how to record a podcast, how to upload a podcast. But at the end of the day, your podcast is great. The GSD is great because of you, because you created the art. You have the art behind you, and you have your personality. You bring that art to it, and I'm sure you refined it and actually getting better and constantly getting better. And that's what drives your listeners to continue to listen to you and tell others. And that's the key thing about entrepreneurship. People who get into entrepreneurship miss. They forget about there's the art side, and art doesn't come like no one can teach you the art. Art as developed, it has to be, it's got to come from within, and which means that it takes time. We all look at the 10,000 hour rules by Malcolm Gladwell, but it is freaking true. You got to take the time to really finesse it, and you got to constantly get better and better and never stop. That's the difference between someone who is successful in entrepreneurship and anything that they do, that they're not willing to stop. They're willing to continue to give it a go and learn from the best. One of my friends, Jason Gaynard, says, he says, if you're in a room and you're the smartest person in the room, you're in the wrong room. You want to be the dumbest person in the room. You want to be elevated and surround yourself with people who are going to elevate you to a better game.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy. I went to business school, lasted about 18 months because I was like, man, I'm not getting the tactics. I mean, I grew up in an entrepreneur family, so I had some firsthand observing experience, if you will, and realized, man, this isn't really prepping me for this game. So you're right. We go get these degrees that really don't prep us for it. It's like, hey, I'm this brilliant chef. Well, it has nothing to do with your ability of being that restaurant owner, So, okay, so then let's talk about though. What were some of the, because a lot of times we'll talk about our successes, but we don't always talk about, I don't want to say failures because they're our best learning moments that truly define us as entrepreneurs. But what were some of those initial learning experiences that you had to overcome as you were building your practice?
I think one of the things, I call them lessons, and the lessons that you learn is that the things you try are always going to be the ones that actually help you steer in the right direction. So I'll give you another. It's not even chiropractic. When I was actually a chiropractor, because I had that ADD part of me, I guess. I think it was a year and a half into practice, I got together with a friend of mine I was probably like 29, and he would have been maybe like 19, 20 years old. And we had this idea, because we were into like personal development stuff. We goes, let's become Amazon for personal development. So we started this like online business called iLife Studio, which was basically trying to be like the Amazon of personal development stuff. So we used to buy all these books and then built a website, and then this is going back to 2003, 2004, built a website and then sell these websites and ship these boxes to a variety of places around the world. We put in like, I think $5,000 in or something just to kind of give it a go. It didn't become successful, and that's fine. But the thing was, what I've learned about trialing different things is that you don't have to pour a whole bunch of money into or effort into something, but you got to put your effort in there, but you don't have to put a lot of money to get started. But what you do is that when you get started, you learn something from it. I learned a lot about how to build a website. I learned a lot about, how to, market to the marketplace and what not to do. And everything that I learned from the lessons, the failures that I had, was certain things I say to clients or patients or prospects didn't work. And I had to figure out how to turn it around, rather than using the same script or same ways of tactics of actually trying to get people to understand chiropractic, because people oftentimes they don't understand what we do, and so therefore it's like figuring out different ways. But the thing is, what most people forget to do is that if they don't actually spend the time to actually even start, because they're trying to be perfect, you will never actually get the learning lessons in real life experience, right? Remember this guy wrote this blog with David Chang, who is the founder and owner of Momofuku. And he says, basically, you can't learn to cook from a book. Like, you literally have to, you have to go and cook. That's the only way to become a chef, is actually go and do it. You can read all the books about cooking all you want, but unless you actually go and do, you can't do it. And I think that's the missing part about entrepreneurship. And, when people start anything, it's the ability to be able to just go and do and learn how to fail. I'm a person who didn't like to fail. It's one of those things that, I don't think any of us like to do it. It's hurtful. It's hard. It freaking beats you down at times. But the thing is that it's how many times you can get up, right? It's how many times you can actually get back up. And I know it's so cliche to say that, but it's the truth. Most people who are successful, someone like yourself and people you've interviewed, they're successful because they've had a whole freaking bunch of failures and they learned to not be afraid of them. And sure, there's always a part and there's always want to give up. And you got to be able to rise above it and really just find a way.
Yeah, it's Thomas Edison's favorite quote of, "I didn't fail 10,000 times. I learned 10,000 ways it didn't work." Right? So
that's right.
I love
that. Exactly.
So, when you started the podcast, and I love podcasting. I haven't been in the game near as long as you, but it's been about 18 months now, and it's been amazing. I mean, number one, you get to just I get to pick brilliant minds like yours every single day, so it's massive for self-development. But the relationships and the opportunities it creates is massive. And I'm a huge proponent of people going out there starting their own podcasts. When you started yours, though, because there's really two ways you could take it, right? You could go out there, okay, you're getting with these other doctors. Hey, well, let's create this podcast where we're educating the general public on the power of chiropractic or chiropractors, or should we go out there and create a podcast for other chiropractors? How did you decide which path to go? Because there's a lot of people that struggle with that.
Yeah, so initially, because we were all chiropractors at the time, the logical step was to let's get the message out to a whole bunch of other chiropractors. But then we thought, what? We want to get the message out to the world. We wanted them. You got to decide what your intention is. Like, what's the purpose of what you're trying to do? For us, we were just really wanted to kind of get our message out to the general public. And the key, and I remember this very, very clearly. In the first year or so, a lot of chiropractors kind of came out to us because we're called the wellness guys. And we took that specific angle. It was very calculated in a sense, or strategic if you want to call it, in the sense that we didn't talk about chiropractic at all in the first year. And chiropractors our friends and goes, why don't you talk about chiropractic? And you should talk about chiropractors to the podcast so you get the message out there. And the answer to them is because people don't care. like you guys are chiropractors, you care, but the general public don't care about chiropractic. They don't care about chiropractic. What they do care about is health and wellness. That's what the majority of the people, our audience anyways, they want to care. They care about their health. They want to care about wellness. And let's talk about what they want to hear, right? And obviously, because we're all chiropractors, we have a chiropractic bias in the sense of how we see health and wellness. That's going to be different than everybody else. We don't need to push our chiropractic message to anyone. All we need to do is tell them what they actually want to hear, which is health and wellness, and then have our filters through it. And then if they like it, awesome. They become massive fans and listeners. If they don't, they will go off to someone else. And that's the key about, marketing is really about finding about what you do best, but you don't have to push anything on anybody. If you push anything on anybody, like you and I, we'll probably get turned off. Right? No one wants to be sold at. And that's why we made a very, very strategic decision not to talk about chiropractic and just allow our personalities and let who we are identify with. And so many listeners who actually never even heard about chiropractic, all of a sudden now email us or message us saying, hey, I never knew chiropractors were like this. Can you find me a chiropractor in this particular area? Absolutely. I just got one today. Actually, today, someone just messaged me, goes, I'm in Sydney. Could you find me a chiropractor? I haven't actually found a chiropractor who just resonates like in your message. Perfect. Tell me your area you live in, and I'll go find one for you.
Yeah, that's powerful, man. And the cool thing about podcasts is you can always kind of see what message resonates with your downloads and your comments. Yep. And, you can see what the audience wants more of. And I couldn't agree more. I mean, the consumer today hates being sold, even though they love to buy, right?
Yeah,
so you develop
absolutely.
that connection with them, and that's what we're doing, develop a connection with strangers, and then eventually when they're ready, they'll raise their hand. So at what point then, because I know you transition now into coaching a lot of other chiropractors, did that come from the podcast? Did other chiropractors start listening to you guys' podcast, and then that result in that, or how did that come about?
Yeah, I think that resonated with a lot of chiropractors. If they see that chiropractor, a fellow colleague, someone that they know is actually doing something and actually making an impact in the world in terms of getting the message across, they're going to position me in a certain authority level, and so therefore that through that particular authority created my ability, because people kept on asking, goes, can you help me in my practice? And really what I do now is help coach chiropractors not to sell better, not to become better chiropractors in their techniques or skills. I want to help chiropractors in terms of their practices. I want to help them communicate better. I wanted to really help them, make connections better, build a tribe in your community. You don't have to go worldwide. If you want to stay local, stay local. If you want to go worldwide, let me help you do that. The key is really building connections and building community. Like yourself, you have a GSD tribe, people who love listening to you, who are going to tell people about you, who just love that voice and your message and the people you bring on because they feel connected to you. And this is what podcast does, right? We're here live on a video. If you want to go jump on YouTube and go check us out, because you get to see us, and you're almost like a fly on a wall. And that's what podcasting does. I think the podcast has allowed us, or the people outside of us, to start to see a deeper inside of us and ourselves and the stories that we actually tell ourselves. Because a 2-minute snippet on television and all that stuff doesn't really mean much. But when you get to hear someone over and over again for half an hour or an hour, you get to know who they are, because you can't BS an hour, and especially when you're doing like multiple shows, you can't BS yourself. You have to be authentic of who you are. Like this, your personality right here on camera right now is who you are, and you can't fake that.
Yeah, and I think people are going to connect with you on a higher level because they're going to have this persona of maybe what a chiropractor is, but now they're listening to podcasts, they're connected with, they're like, oh man, Dr. Tom, he's just this regular cool dude, right? So that connection becomes huge, man. So are you still today? Do you still have your practice, or have you transitioned out of that and you're just full-time coaching and podcasting?
Yeah, I transitioned out of it. About 2 years ago, I stopped practicing. I sold my practice in Perth, which is on the other side of Australia, and then I, moved over to Sydney on the East Coast because I travel so much internationally and traveling and speaking. So I wanted to kind of stay on a, it's just on the East Coast just to kind of get some travels, make it easier. I thought it was going to be easier, but then, going to Europe is actually longer now. So I'm going to practice. I'm actually full-time coaching, and we run, the podcast, which is, the 20 shows, and then we also have the we run the wellness summit, which we just had like 2 weeks ago. We had 950 people there, so which was awesome. So we've been just doing some fun stuff, and what I loved about what I do now is that I get to kind of spend time with my kids. I got an 8-year-old and a 5-year-old, and being at home, being able to take them to school and drop them off at school and pick them up, and being home here and allows me to do that. And I just enjoy that part, and having the freedom of traveling, it's been fantastic. So.
Yep, love it, man. So why Australia? What when you're in Canada, what made you decide to go to Australia?
I would flip the camera over right now and show you why. It's a freaking beautiful sight right now. You can see the ocean and the sunshine. I don't know if you've ever been in Toronto, Canada, but it's freaking cold. Yeah. And I came here as a student in 2001, and I literally fell in love with Australia. I loved the people. I loved the scenery and just the weather. Now that I lived here for 14 years, my intention was, my wife and I came over for a 10-month stint to travel. And within about 2 weeks, we said we got to stay here longer, and that became 2 years, and 2 years become 14. And my kids have been born and raised here, and yeah, we're not going back. I can't fathom going back to the snow and the cold. Every time I've gone back, it's just been like, this is the reason why I don't live here anymore. But I don't mind visiting. I just don't want to live in the cold weather. I
can relate, man. I'm originally from Michigan, just south of Toronto, right? And then now I'm in Phoenix, Arizona. So I totally get it, man. Totally understand. So, walk us through the early days of, because people see what you have now. And they're like, oh, man, that's the life, dude. I mean, he gets to go travel to all these amazing places. He's coaching. He's hanging out with his family. But when you start this, they don't see the behind the scenes when you're starting this. Because in the beginning, dude, you're running your practice. You're coaching. You're doing all the webinars, podcasts, all this stuff. There's no time in the day to do it all, but you're figuring it out. And sometimes for years, right, before the fruits come, because we see so many people that want to get on this podcast kick, and they just quit, dude, because they don't realize that, it's like, hey, we got to get all the other shit done, dude. And then we also got to do all this other stuff. Like, walk us through what it actually took in those early days so people really get a true picture of that.
Okay. All right. So I think like the picture is that I'm an overnight success, 20 years in the making, right? So I think that's the key thing people got to realize. The podcast world, like honestly, man, I remember we've done this for 5 years now. I remember the amount of times our wives used to say, goes, why are you recording these podcasts? Like, who's actually listening? My wife honestly just joined me on my Inside the Champions Mind podcast as a co-host, and she's never listened to a single episode in 5 years, right? Not a single episode, not even any podcast, let alone my podcast. So she doesn't understand. And then now that she's actually been on a few episodes now, we've done 5 episodes together. She's hooked. Like she's like listening to people's podcasts and she's actually listening. So what we forget is that nighttime, I used to live in Perth, so it'd be a 3-hour time difference from the East Coast, and these guys were on the East Coast, and we used to record at like a Sunday night at 8 o'clock, which was like 10 o'clock their time or 11 o'clock at their time. We used to record every single week. We used to get the guests from, we had Tim Ferriss and we had Rob Wolf and all those guys, and they're all in America, so which means just like you, we have to go in a different time zone, like which you had to do to figure out different time zones and all that crazy stuff and record. And we still had our practice, like our day job, right? We don't make much money from podcasting, right? There's no income directly from podcasting. What it is we do it because of passion. And you're absolutely right. People, when they want to start a podcast, unless you're willing to make sure you give this a go and never quit, don't even start, because it's a pain in the butt. The amount of, like, in terms of, I remember I had to edit everything in the beginning, using GarageBand. I used to upload everything, until we actually had a staff and I think we didn't actually bring in someone until like 2 years in. I had to do everything myself and then upload. And it's going back 5 years when podcasting, there wasn't that much material out there, for people to show you exactly what to do. Now there's tons of people actually showing you exactly how, step by step, the science. We just kind of wung it, man. We just did whatever we had to do to get it up there. And you'll see right here back, for those people on YouTube, like you'll see a big picture here with Lou Gehrig's jersey, and I got a signature of Lou Gehrig. And the reason why I love, like, Lou Gehrig's one of my favorite athletes. The reason why is because, he, back in the 20s and 30s played, just about it behind Babe Ruth. He played 2,130 games in a row. In a row. Back in the 20s and 30s, man, there's no physios, there's no caros, there's no, freaking painkillers and stuff. He played through broken bones, twisted ankles, torn ligaments, whatever. He played for 12 years straight. And the only reason he stopped is because he developed Lou Gehrig's disease, right? ALS. And he had to stop. He couldn't even pick up a bat anymore. But the thing is, it's not just that he just played every single day, but he played for 12 years straight, but he actually was great. He was great at it. He was hitting home runs, he was hitting RBIs, and he's considered one of the best first basemen that has ever lived. And I have tremendous respect for that. He didn't have an ego, he just did his job. And the thing is, when the hardship that you're talking about, for us who are starting, is because it's about just doing it, not caring about what are people thinking. You're just going to produce good work and never satisfied with the work that you produced last. There's never been the best episode. It's always the best episode is still ahead of us. Your best art is still ahead of you. The best part of you is still ahead of you. And it's about constantly pushing. Gary Vaynerchuk, I'm sure your listeners will be, very familiar with, he talks about the hustle. And I think that's really important. I met Gary 4 months ago. I don't actually know, about, 8 months ago. And, how he is off stage is exactly the same on stage. Like his personality doesn't change. And the key is it's about, being authentic. And so there's a persona that you are when you're on stage or on podcast. It has to be the same, because that's too tiring. So grinding it through, which is really important. The hustle is really important. But I think there's also the other side. I think hustling hard without actually appreciating and taking the time to appreciate what you have gained and what you've done, I think is also a bad idea. So I think it's really important to have that balance. The balance is hustle hard, but also appreciate take the time to actually going, wow, this is what I created. Even if it's only 10 listeners, or even if it's only 100 listeners, does it really matter? Because the only thing I believe, you asked about like the hardship. You know what? I didn't even know. We didn't have stats back then, 5 years ago. I mean, I wasn't really looking at it. For Inside Champions Mind, I didn't even know how many listeners I actually, because I don't do it for the listeners. I do it for me. I do it because I love just being able to talk about that type of thing. I think that's the key, is that you just got to do it not caring whether anybody's listening or not. And just doing it because your development of the art becomes that. I don't know where it's going to take me, but 5 years from now, because I know that I've been doing this for 5 years or 10 years now, at that point, it's going to make me a better person and doing that whatever thing I'm ready for in 5 years' time.
Yeah, it was one of those things when I started my podcast, it was what would define success for the podcast, right? And for me, it definitely wasn't about viewership or downloads or affiliates. When I talk to people that will start a podcast because they want to create affiliate money, I'm like, man, it's probably not the best gig for you to jump into, because I mean, it's very hard to tell if it's you're going to be able to monetize on it. And I get asked that question too, like, how long are you going to do this, or how long are you going to do this until you don't monetize? And if there's one thing that I can say that I'd want to do for the rest of my life, even if I never got paid on it, it's doing this. Because again, the relationships are amazing. You get to pick brilliant minds like yours every single day. So yeah, the passion absolutely has to be there.
Yeah. I mean, you talk to a lot of the top podcasters. I remember speaking to Jordan Harbinger and, about, the Art of Charm podcast. And when he talks about, podcasting, he said, he actually says, here's all the reasons why you shouldn't start a podcast. It doesn't tell people why they should. Here's the reason why you shouldn't. And one of the things that if you want to make money in podcasting, it's only for a very few, the top guys like the Tim Ferriss, and they're going to get the affiliates. But for guys who are just starting, because there's so much variety of podcasts now, there's so many people doing podcasts, you shouldn't do it just for the money. And you should really just do it because you have a message to give, and you're willing to work at it to get that hustle out there.
Yep. Love it, man. So then as the coaching business starts, right? Because I mean, now you're coaching, consulting a lot of these. I mean, what were some of the, because a lot of different coaching models out there, right? How did you get into that space? And how has that coaching model evolved? Because some people that want to get in that space, like, well, should I one-on-one, do one-on-one consult? Should we do group? Should I do a product? What does that look like, and how has that changed over the years?
Yeah, I think I was lucky enough that I had a really good friend of mine, one of my best friends. His name is Taki Moore, and he guided me through the process. He actually helped me and convinced me to transition from being a chiropractor to a coach. And we picked the model right from the beginning. We just decided, what kind of model you want to work with. I still like dealing with one-on-one, but really that's not leverage for me. And for me was that I didn't want to trade my patients for chiropractors. It's just be like, we're going from one-on-one to practice to one-on-one coaching. I didn't want to do that. So I just made a decision that I wanted to form groups and community. And I'm really happy for that decision, because for me, I resonate best probably when people ask me questions in a group format, and I literally get a lot of energy from presenting to a group. Doesn't mean I don't do any one-on-one consulting with my clients. It just means that I rather do groups and then have one-on-one consultation when they're required. And so for me right now, the coaching model, I've been doing it for about 3 years now, and that has evolved, and that has changed as well in terms of what worked and what doesn't work. It's the same thing. Like, I look back 2 years ago and I'm thinking what I was doing, I'm like, holy crap, like, man, I used to teach and teach and teach and teach, and I used to pour massive amounts of information to everyone, and they would be like, oh my god, and they're just absorbing this like a fire hose, and then all of a sudden they go, yeah, this is great information, but they do nothing. This is human nature. You just give them all the information, they do nothing, and that's so frustrating. But that's the problem, right? We're in an age where we're in the information age, and that is the issue. The issue is that we have so much information, you can get it for free from everything else, but you don't know what to do with it, and you don't actually have the time to actually process the information. You're just trying to get more information. And so what I've changed my coaching model now is to be less teaching and more doing. So, I create 3 times a year. We get together for 3 days where it's mostly 20% teaching and 80% doing. Like, here's what you should do. Here's how you do it. And then give them the space and time away from their business, away from their family, to actually work on that thing. That's the key. Most people don't have the time to actually execute. Everybody has all this knowledge from, how to market, how to do social media, how to do Facebook, how to do, Twitter or whatever. But they don't actually have time to sit down and actually process it. Is this right for me? Is Twitter right for me? Is Facebook right for me? Is podcasting right for me? Is YouTube right for me? And actually sit down and process those thoughts. We need to spend some time to actually think, and to actually think, is this the right direction? Or is it just because someone has told me this is the right thing? Just because someone tells me to do something doesn't mean it should be done by you. So it's about finding space. So that's how the coaching model has evolved from there. It's really just focusing on, I think most people now is they need a coach. No, not because they need more information. They just need someone to guide them through the process, to help them and guide them through what they need. And everybody needs a different type of coach. I do. I'm sure you do. It just depends on what you need and what your outcome is.
Yeah, I love it, man. Love the idea of the implementation workshops. It's so ungodly critical. So with coaching all these entrepreneurs now for the years that you've done this, I mean, do you find that when they come to you, that there seems to be a few commonalities that they all seem to have that's really holding them back from achieving that greatness? And if so, what are a few of those commonalities that maybe a lot of our struggling entrepreneur listeners would have as well?
Yeah, the commonality is that everybody knows what they want, or sometimes they don't, but they know what they think the version of them, the true version of themselves are going to be, and they think it's going to happen yesterday. I think that's the biggest thing that most people come to me with, and I see that so often. Is like, I know what I want, and they expect it like it's going to happen like that. Just because I'm in this group, I'm going to and have it without doing the work. And when I say without doing the work, they know that there's some of them come in with thinking, no, they have work to do. They don't even realize the amount of work that has to be done. You and I would both know like how hard it is to create this thing that we're having right now, like the work behind the scenes, which no one ever freaking sees. And that's the thing, is that when you get into something, even in presentation, you look at a speaker, a speaker goes up there and talks for 45 minutes or 60 minutes, and you go, wow, that's a great presentation. And that's the extent of it. Sometimes you just go, wow, that's a beautiful presentation, and you move on with your life. But that speaker took hours and hours preparing that one slide, to make one point that took 30 seconds. That speaker took all this reading and all this material to kind of craft a great, beautiful story for 60 minutes. We never appreciate that unless you were a speaker. And I think when whatever venture that any of the listeners going through, whatever venture you go into, really see behind the scenes. No, anybody who says that this is easy, that should be a red flag right away. Nothing is easy. Like if it was easy, all of us will be doing it, right? What's easy is making a peer look easy, right? And that's what we do. We got to make it things like everything's fantastic, but what we never see is like all the hard work that actually led up to that. And when I said I'm an overnight success 20 years in the making, it's true. It's because it's not. I might not even thought. There's no way I would have thought I was being in the podcast world or traveling around the world 20 years ago, or even 15 years ago, or even 10 years ago. But all those learnings, I remember, here's the thing. I remember the years of buying internet products. I don't know if you ever did this, but I bought so many internet products, right? In terms of like getting online, building a business online. And I failed at every single one of them, right? I know I bought the Jeff Walkers, the Evan Pagan. I bought, Frank, I bought everything, and I tried everything, but I never really fully implemented and executed everything. But I learned a lot from it. I never realized how much I learned and absorbed over those 5 years. I think it was about 5 years where I just worked at nighttime. My wife used to go to bed around, say, 9:30. I was working from 9:30 to midnight to 1 o'clock every single night. And this is when I'm still practicing. So I'm practicing at 7:30 in the morning. So I show up at 7. I practice till 7 o'clock at nighttime, come home, eat dinner, spend some time with my wife. She goes to bed, and I'm working till about midnight to 1 o'clock every single night for at least five years, if not more. And I just hustle through that. And and nothing came out of it. I never made a dime, no money, nothing. I was just working in my practice. But what I learned from it was someone reminded me, a good friend and mentor, Jeff Spencer. He said to me, he goes, don't think of it as lost. Don't think of that you didn't win. Like we talked about, those failures. Just think of it, those were things we're preparing you for your next venture, what was ready. And he was so right. All those things about internet marketing and all that stuff has helped me develop my mind for writing better copy now. I'm that much ahead because I had all those 5 years of failures of not waking at work. So all those things have come into play where I see what happens, and especially in my profession at the moment, is they don't even know. If they have to get into the game now, and if they actually get online, actually learn to market online, they don't even know where to start. And because they haven't started, and they think it's going to happen like tomorrow, or they can just hire someone. You can hire someone, but if you don't actually understand the mechanics of it, then you're just hiring someone. You're just wasting money, and they just do things that are kind of dumb and stupid. And that's what it is. But it's just lessons. We actually have to be prepared to work, and that's the thing that you have to be willing to do, and see that it is going to take work to get you to wherever you want to go.
So let's say then they understand, they now understand that this is a marathon, it's not a sprint, it's not going to happen overnight, it's going to take time, and here's the amount of work it's going to take, and they grasp that. It's easy to get motivated. It's very difficult to stay motivated for a decade. Do you have any personal routines that you do, that you advise your clients on to stay motivated, even those tough-ass times, but to make sure that you're staying motivated for the long haul?
Yeah, I think I'll make a slight little correction on my mindset on how I see it. I think that it is is not a marathon so much, but it is a series of sprints. So I think of as more like sprints. You go hard and you got to stop and pause. So, there's no in particular order in terms of ritual. So what I do is typically I get my clients to do is that if you know what you want to achieve in a year, then it's really easy to break it down into quarters. So I work in 90-day sprints. And in 90 days, what you do is you figure out what do I want to achieve in that 90 day? What projects do I want to achieve? And that's key, projects. Not about what you're trying to achieve or goals. I'm talking about projects. What are you willing to commit to a project? No more than 3, 1 to 2 or 3 projects that you're willing to commit that's going to get you closer to that goal if you actually complete it. Projects are meant to be completed. And then you got 90 days to complete it. And then, sometimes you fart around for 30 days and then you still got 60 days to figure it out, right? And so that's what I think of sprints. I sprint for 90 days, take a break and evaluate, did I get to where I wanted to go? And if I didn't, then I need to evaluate the next 90 days. Is that maybe I was too ambitious, which most of us are. So therefore, you go, maybe I need to scale it down a little bit, and then so that you're trying to chunk it away. And each quarter just starts chunking it away. So that's one ritual that I typically do. And each day, no particular order. I think you're right. Motivation doesn't last. You need motivation, but it's only short burst. Think of motivation as something that will get you through it. So I think of motivation as like something I might do every single day, like, something that just gets me going, but I know it's not going to sustain me throughout. So motivation could be something as simple as going on YouTube, man. Go listen to you for 5 minutes. It doesn't mean just pick a chunk and just listen to you for 5 minutes and get your head right in space. Go type in motivation and then just watch a video for 5 minutes and just to kind of get you amped up and do some sort of ritual to kind of get you going. The other thing that I would probably do on a daily basis is that you want to write out, 3 things that you want to accomplish today. That's it. 3 things. Don't make it like a list of 20. Just make it 3 things. And if you did those 3 things, you'll be completely happy and just focus on those 3 things. And everything else you get done on top of those 3 things, it becomes a bonus. Another ritual that I'd probably like to do is that I really figured out myself because I work from home. And what I do is that I actually have no client calls in the mornings, because that's my precious time. I have client calls in the afternoon because I get tired, right? You can only sustain so much energy and have so much willpower. And so what I do is I put all my creative work in the mornings. So typically in the mornings, I'm actually, having, if I have to write an article or a blog, or if I have to create a product or, some sort of, program, then that's when I put all my energy in the morning. But in the afternoon, I start to fade a little bit. I've lost enough willpower. I can't be a creative. So that's when I draw my clients' energy. If they ask me something, if I have an interaction with my clients, I get hyped up about it because then I'm actually trying to solve people's problem. I don't have to use my own brain because, I am using my brain, but I'm not using my own willpower to actually do it because they're asking me a question. I will answer that question. So I usually have my client calls in the afternoon. So positioning your day, knowing when you function best and having that creativity and block out time. So those are really, really important rituals. Exercise, man, I think that's one of the most important things. Getting started early. I get up at 5:01. I was going to say every minute counts. So, I get up at 5 in the morning, at 5:01 in the morning, and then I go to CrossFit in the morning, and that's the first thing I do at 5:30. The reason why is because I want to get it out of the way, because I know during the day I'll make an excuse because I have no willpower. But 5:30 in the morning, all I have to think about is not going to the gym. It's first thing in the morning, 5:01, and my alarm goes off is roll out of bed. Roll out of your bed. And that's all that I just got to run this line in my head. Roll out of bed, roll out of bed. And once I roll out of bed, once my feet's on the ground, it's like go to the toilet. It's like one step at a time. And once I get to the toilet and the lights are on, I'm like, okay, I'm already got this far. I'm not going back to bed. That's the most stupid thing in the world. I might as well just keep going. Have my gym shoes ready, have my clothes ready so that it makes it easier. So like you're trying to remove all these little hurdles so that stops you from going to gym. Because if you think about most people, they get up in the morning, just say tomorrow you start to get up at 5 and they go, oh man, I'm so tired. Of course you're tired. You have the first time you do it. And then you go, oh, I got to think of to go to the gym. That means I have to get up, go to the toilet. I have to, go get my shoes. I got to find my clothes. And then I got to drive 5 minutes to the gym. And that's just too hard. I'm just going to go back to bed. Right? And we have so much hurdles in front of you, of course it's hard and you never actually do it. So that's why you want to just think one thing at a time, one next step at a time, and then all these other things that happen, you want to make sure you eliminate as much friction in your life, decision fatigue, and then allow that to happen. So I think, all those things help. I'm sure there's a lot more rituals that I do, but, I hope that's helpful to your listeners.
Yep. No, I love it, man. So, so often we see these successful entrepreneurs, that may go out there and create successful businesses, create fat bank accounts, if you will, but their marriage goes south. They don't know their kids. Their health goes poor. It sounds like you're a dude that's very intentional about all of it, right? Taking care of your health, taking care of your business, creating wealth for your family, but leveling up as a father, husband. And again, I hate the word balance, right? Because we're always kind of like, counterbalance, but how do you do it? What does it look like to make sure that you're not neglecting things that are important to you?
Yeah, I think it's really important. First of all, I think it's awareness. Awareness is being aware of your values. What do you what do you value? Some people don't value family. Like, I mean, if I look at some people, just if family is a big value to you, then you need to evaluate what are your top 3 to 5 values and make sure that you actually create time for each one. Now, it's not. And I hate the word balance as well because I don't think it's a balance. There's no such thing as balance. It's like I think of life as almost like a spinning plate, spinning some plates. Those plate spinners. You got one plate and you spin one, and then you got to go to number 2, and by the time you put the third on, you got to focus back on one. You can only focus on one plate at a time, and I sort of see life as that. You can focus on your business, but if I'm recording this podcast, I'm thinking about my kids right now. That's not doing you or your listeners any good, right? So I can't be while I'm playing with my kids thinking about work. And yeah, does it happen? Absolutely, man. I'm human, so which means I get distracted. Have I been on at dinner time Facebooking something? Of course I have. I'm guilty of that too. So now what I do is I make a rule that I turn my phone away, not even in the vicinity, or I turn it down so I don't actually have those urges to actually fight it. And so the key, I think, is I'll use a story. I was watching the Rio Olympics recently here in Australia. We're watching the swimming. And there's a swimmer that I was watching the 400-meter race, a freestyle women's. It was Katie Ledecky. For the Americans listening, you guys would know that. She was winning the 400 meters, and I was watching her, and everybody, the 8 people starting off, all the females there, and boom, within the first 25 meters, you can tell right away, who's going to be the clear winner of this. And after about 50 meters or 100 meters, she was so far ahead. There's no way anybody's catching up to her. And by the time she was 300, she was like miles ahead. I think she broke the world record, and I think she the second place winner in a 400 meter was 4 seconds behind her. 4 seconds. She did the 800 meters. She beat the second place winner by 11 seconds. Freaking Usain Bolt can have started and finished the race, before the second place winner even touched the wall. And that's amazing to me. And what will occur to me was thinking about, all right, if I was Katie Ledecky, what would you be thinking? You're swimming your own race, aren't you? Like, you don't even have a closest competitor, but you're just swimming your own race, and the only person you're trying to beat is your own world record. But I thought, no, forget about Katie for a second. What about the other 8 swimmers? If I was the second place winner and I look up and go, holy crap, like Katie's so far ahead, I have no freaking chance. There's got to be that mentality, right? There's got to be going, I have no chance at this. Sometimes you just got to know, I don't have a chance to beat this person. So what is your headspace in? Are you trying to chase her still? You got 600 meters to go in this 800-meter race. What are you trying to do? Well, you can't. You just got to swim your own race. You can't be worrying about Katie. You can't be worrying about the third place. You just got to swim your own race and do your best. And I think a lot of us, what happens in entrepreneurship is that we get pulled and sucked in by how much money people are making. And I've hung out with a very, very successful entrepreneur, but when you say successful, what are we measuring success by? Is it because of how much money they make, or is it how successful their marriage or their relationship with the kids? Just exactly what you said. I think what's really important is that, and I realize this now, and what I've made this mistake, and I still fall into this trap where we're trying to chase something that may not be resonate with us. Like I used to be chasing things, going, oh, my friend's doing this much, I should be doing that. And I realized, that's not me. I'm not like this person, and I shouldn't be trying to chase. I should be focused and swimming my own race. This is what I do. My measuring is my own world record or my personal best. And you know what? It doesn't matter what anybody else is doing, because I need to focus on me. And for me, what's important to me is my business, my family, and my relationship with my wife, and my friendships in my community, within my community. And those are my highest core values, equal in standing. So how I focus on it is to ensure that I have certain rules. Like, I travel a lot. However, I typically, wouldn't say never, because it hasn't a couple times, but I made an arrangement with my family that I don't travel 2 weekends in a row. That's something that I want to make sure, even though the opportunity is fantastic, I will make sure that I focus a lot of my on my travels is to make sure that I don't go away for 2 weekends in a row. Has it happened? Of course it has. But if you make certain rules with your, certain commitments to your wife and your kids, then you have a hard rule to stand by, and that makes things, saying no to things is really, really important. And I start to recognize that it's not about chasing millions and millions of dollars. It's about chasing what I'm really after. That's why I said about the Gary Vee thing about hustling hard. Yeah. Hustling hard is fantastic, but also realizing that you also have a fantastic life to live too. Like, what are you here for? Everybody's different. Everybody has a different answer. Some people, want to hustle. Gary, we've had this conversation with Gary. He hustles hard because his business, VaynerMedia, is his baby. I remember the question was asked to him. It's like, if you had to choose your kids and your business, what would you choose? He didn't have an answer for that. And I totally respect him for that, because he really loves his business just as much as his kids. He doesn't have to have an answer for him. He said he knows that's his downfall. That's the key when he says self-awareness, that he's self-aware of where his downfalls are. And I think we need to be aware. I started this conversation by saying awareness. You need to be aware of what your values are and what's important to you, and knowing that when you do something, there's always going to be a consequence to that. And are you willing to live with that consequence? And you got to be very, very clear.
So we're talking about getting clear with this, because I used to always say that there's 3 things that create all suffering, pain, and essentially even wars, which was resistance, resentment, and revenge. And now I'm like, there's a 4th component, which is comparison. And social media makes it a bitch, right? Because it's like, you're keeping up with the Joneses game. It's very difficult. And then sometimes it's like, well, dude, are these really my goals? Why do I even have these goals? Or is this out of comparison? Or like, how do you recenter yourself to make sure that they're your goals, not your parents' goals, not all these other people's goals, other people's expectations? Do you go through a certain reflection process, or?
Yeah, that's a really great question, and I'll fully admit that I'm sort of still going through it myself. Like, it's something that I'm constantly challenging myself to figure out, what am I looking for? And it's a constant question. One of the things that I've learned to do is reflecting. It's actually writing things down and asking those questions. Like, what am I here for? Like, what am I trying to achieve? And actually, journaling I've never journaled in my entire life. And I was with a guy named Philip McKernan, something called Brave Soul in Ireland. I was there for 7 days. We had no technology, which was so freaking hard, right? But you know what? Here's the thing. What I learned about that trip the first few days was I was freaking addicted. I was freaking addicted to my phone, or not even phone, just I'm addicted to distraction. And so I dare anybody to try this. Put your phone away and commit yourself, say 24 hours, no touching that phone. But I'm not worried about whether you go into the phone or not. I want you to be aware how many times you actually itch for it. Like, I'm just gonna go, oh yeah, I can't do that. I'm just gonna go check. I'll listen to. Oh, I can't do that. Oh, I'm just gonna. And think about why you do it. We're almost to a place where we don't even want to sit with our own thoughts, because we don't want to hear ourselves talk anymore. And so what we do is we distract ourselves. And I know you and I do podcasts, right? We want people to listen to our podcast. But what I'm saying is that I'm a big podcast listener, an audiobook listener, but that's what we're doing. We're distracting ourselves, our own mind, with other people's stuff, which is not necessarily a bad thing, but we're distracted so much because so much information that we forgot to actually listen to our own mind. We forgot to listen to our own voices. And this is why we get lost in not knowing what we want, because we are inundated with everybody else's wants and desires and Facebook messages and posts. We've forgotten about what we truly want. And I think, so I've been in the process in the last, say, 4 months to start to ask those questions in a journal, just to write, like, what do I really want, say? And I would just write, and whatever comes up, comes up. Do I have an answer? No, I don't have an answer. I'm still figuring myself out. But the key is having a relationship with myself. Like, we're talking about relationship with family and kids. How are we supposed to have a great relationship with our wives or partners or husbands or, our kids if we don't even have a great relationship with ourselves? If we can't even look ourselves in the mirror and say, I love you. I know as corny as that sounds, but think about that. That seems weird, right? Well, why should it sound weird? Like, you live in that person and you expect someone to love you, but you can't say that to yourself. There's something inherently not wrong with that, but there's something you should question. What is it that you don't like about yourself? Like, and then having those discussions with yourself and actually thinking about it. I know that seems, I'm kind of gone woo-woo here for you, but that thinking about the conversation inside your own brain, is a very important conversation that I think we all need to have. and discussing and finding out. I think so. To answer your question is reflecting upon it, asking those questions and writing it down and finding what answers come up, because you'll be surprised what comes up for you.
Yeah, I love it. It's so powerful. More people, they spend more time designing their grocery list and their life plan. And then all of a sudden, blink of an eye, they're 84 in their deathbed, and they have this massive, heavy-hearted regret. It's like, well, dude, you never thought about what you wanted. You never designed your life. And no, I don't think it's woo-woo at all, man. I think that's the powerful stuff that we really need to go deep with, So really love it, man. So, we find that good becomes the worst enemy to greatness, right? All legends seem to fall. People get to the point where all things are good enough, and they stop shooting for greatness. What keeps you personally not allowing good enough and continuing for greatness and continue leveling up in your world?
I was when I was in Ireland, I had this discussion. I clearly remember this. We were having dinner, and this person asked me this question, like just blindsided me, and said, what makes you so driven? And I kind of gave him this look, and I went, what makes you think I'm driven? And the people on the table laughed at me because they're like, what, you don't see that you're a driven person? I'm like, no, I don't. And so I don't mean to avoid the question. I don't know. That's the truth. That I don't know. I didn't think I was driven, because I see all these people that I know of that are, massive successful entrepreneurs, and I think that they're driven, and I don't look at myself as driven. But obviously there's that persona that I don't see within myself. And I actually been questioning myself that. I actually look at it and go, what drives me? And I don't really have a straight answer to that. I don't know if it's because of, the way I grew up, or the pursuit of just being constantly better. I do have this inherent desire. I'm trying to answer it now, maybe. I think I do have this inherent desire that I think all of us, like each and every single human being in this world, can have a potential in us, and that we're only scraping the surface. Like any single one of us, including myself, are only living a small percentage of what we're actually capable of. And I think the world as a whole will become a better place in terms of the way we talk to each other, the way we communicate with each other, and the way we respect each other. It will be so much better if we all rise up to at least aim to strive to reach that potential at some point. And some of us will reach 10%, some might reach 80%, some people will reach 5%. But it's not so much the percentage that matters to me. I think what matters more is the striving to actually go after it. You know what I mean? Even if you reach 1% of your potential, but at least you're striving for it, that matters more. And rather than trying to say, oh, I'm 90% of my potential. Well, how the hell do you know what your potential is? I think the striving is more important. So that's where I come from. I guess my mindset is to kind of go, how can I know I can do so much more. And are there days where I don't want to do it? Absolutely, man. But as an overall viewpoint, I would suggest that I constantly kind of want to be better, because I know I can be a better father. I can be a better husband. I can be a better son, and I can be a better person in this world. And that's what I strive to be. And I hope that, for me, I guess one of the things that, in Inside Champions Mind is about life, love, and legacy in my podcast. A legacy, that third thing, matters to me. I don't know why. It just does. It does. I don't have to be like a legacy, like leave a massive legacy of like changing hundreds of millions of people. I just want to know that I helped someone, one person, in this world. And that will, and hopefully it's my kids. I want to leave. It's one of the other things that ever since I had my kids, my first child, Kaya, at 8 years ago, changed me. It changed me in thinking about what kind of life I want to live. And I realized that I'm responsible now for her. Like, I'm in the sense of not responsible because she's going to make her own decisions, but I'm, in the first, 8 to 10 years of her life, I'm responsible for instilling as much as I can to help her and my son Christian to be the best people that they can have, and as many tools as possible so that they can go in this world and make it work. But I can guarantee you, I have no illusion that I'm not screwing them up. Right? Yeah. I know I'm going to screw them up. So no matter what I do, I'm going to screw them up. However, I just hope that I give them at least the best I could give, and then hopefully they will make the right choices. And I can't control the choices they make. I just hope that I've given them enough to help them. So legacy for me matters to me. If you look behind me, like, you see a whole bunch of sports memorabilia. They're not because I'm into sport. I told you I'm into sports, but not because of that. I'm into people who have defined greatness. because they've created a legacy for themselves. Muhammad Ali, they'll see a boxing guy, Muhammad, Joe Montana, the Lou Gehrig's, the Wayne Gretzky's, the Magic Johnson. I believe that they created a legacy not because they were great for one season or two seasons. They were great for their entire career. And they were great people. I admired the tenacity, the people. When I walk into this room, people think I'm a collector. No, I'm not a collector. I want to surround myself with greatness. This is what this room is about. This room is my room. And plus the only room my wife actually lets me hang anything. So, this is to me, it's surrounding myself with greatness. So every time I come in, I respect and remind myself the amount of hard work that they had to do. The Jerry Rice, the Joe Montana, what they had to go through to get to that level, and I need to step it up to reach my potential.
Yeah, creating those environments, man, you just walk in and you feel a different energy, So, and I couldn't agree with you more. I 12 years ago, when I started leveling up and on my journey, I had the low moment in my life where I was planning out my suicide, right? I'd planned everything out and it was the lowest moment of my life. And I realized at that point, it was because I was operating down here when I know my potential's up here, and it was creating so much massive depression. But the cool thing is it wasn't closing the gap. Like within 2 days, that depression was gone because I started taking action to reach it, right? So it's not closing the gap, but like you said, it's just every single day being intentional, knowing that you're taking that action. So I love it. So, I know time's running long here and you got to get jamming soon. So just a couple last questions for you. But first, I want to make sure, and we'll have links to all your websites, your podcast, all that. But if somebody's on the road right now, listening on iTunes, what's the best way to learn more about you and check out your podcast?
Yeah, if you want to check out a podcast, you just got to go to thewellnesscouch.com. I'm in two of those. One is Inside the Champion's Mind. That's with my wife, and we actually start shooting videos as well. And also the other one is the Wellness Guys show. That's on health and wellness. There's three guys bantering, talking about health and wellness, making, just having fun with it, but also interviewing some amazing people around the world. So, so those are the two main podcasts that I do.
Yep, love it. And like I said, though, you guys that are watching this, we'll have links right below, so just make sure you click and you can go check that out right away. So if you could go back in time, if you could rewind the clocks, knowing what you know now today, but you could give, when you were first starting this journey, right out of school, if you could give yourself like maybe one or two pieces of advice, knowing what you do right now. So what would that be? Like if you could travel back in time and deliver that?
I think the first thing that came to my mind was I would tell myself, believe in yourself more. I think one of the things I never got a chance to say is that I had really low self-confidence in myself. I never thought I was become a speaker, so I used to be. I'm very shy. I'm actually quite an introvert, and I don't necessarily love to do this. Going out there and meeting people. And so I think one of the things is that low confidence and that loneliness, and just knowing that. I didn't have a massive amount of friends, and I wasn't that popular kid. I was the nerdy kid. I was the guy with the big glasses, and the thing is that I would tell myself is that just believe in yourself, that there's something deep inside of you. And I think that's what I meant by, raising that potential. Maybe that's what drives me most, is because I can see that where I've come from and the success that I created, not to be egotistic. There's no ego about it. It's just that I know I could do more. If I could do that from where I was to where I am now, then there's so much more within me. I think that would be number one. The second thing is, I would say, is start now. Don't wait, start now. Like, don't be perfect. Just go and do it. And the learning comes from starting, not from learning more. And those are the two advice I would give to myself.
Yeah, love it, man. We had another gentleman 2 days ago, actually, from Australia that was on the podcast, Brett Campbell. Cool. And he's got a book coming out, and the cover of it is this cat looking in this mirror, and it sees that lion reflection, and it's about getting that self-confidence. I'm like, and his book goes deep into that, but it's like most people see the cat or see a kitten, not even the lion. So when you give yourself that advice of be confident, that's something that maybe is easy to say but tough to do. Would you give yourself any tips, personal tips, to create that confidence, so you could gain that confidence earlier?
Yeah, I think it's that exercise of it's so cliche to say that, right? And yet, but the advice I think is basically to look at yourself in the mirror, as I mentioned, and start by just telling yourself, I love myself. There's a great book. I wish I can, maybe I'll shoot it to you in the show notes and while I kind of do it here. But there's this great book, and it's a great audiobook. It's only like an hour long. And it's really interesting because basically one of the exercises it tells you to do, and I thought it was fantastic, was it's just to tell yourself, I love myself. I love myself. And just repeatedly. And it's called Love Yourself Like Your Life Depended on It. Love yourself like your life depended on it. It's a great book. It's only an hour long. If you got 2 times speed, you can finish it in 30 minutes. And and the one exercise that stood out with me is this, staring yourself in the mirror and just say, I love myself, I love myself. Even when you're walking, when you're not thinking about anything else, just go, I love myself, I love myself. And that constant thing, it's gonna feel weird, but as you do it, you start to realize, it will sink in, it will rewire. I know you did an interview with the neurosurgeon, right? And as chiropractors, we're all about the brain. And as you tell yourself these things, you're rewiring that brain. And that's the thing. It's not about being confident is about what you tell yourself constantly. It's about how you behave and act accordingly. And all that stuff is neurowiring. And when you're neurowiring yourself and you telling yourself that, and you look yourself in the mirror or just walking around telling yourself you love yourself, that in itself will start to change who you are. Now, will it happen like that? Absolutely not. It's going to take time. Will it take years? Maybe. I'm still learning it. I'm still focusing on it, but I'm way better than I. We talked about series of sprints. It's what you do. It's people who are great. They're not great because of the one thing they did. It's because they constantly do it. Jerry Rice was well known for his practice style. When he went into practice, he used to run full tilt. Guys sit on his team. It's like, why do you run like that? Because I want to run it because I'm scoring a touchdown. I don't care if it's in practice or in the real game. That's why he was the best, because he basically practiced as it was a real game. And I think that we need to do that. When do we practice? Well, we practice every single day of our life. If you don't practice day in, day out, then when you actually ready to perform, you're not up to par. So we need to practice that. And I think to be confident, to get to that confidence stage, you need to kind of constantly do. And that's why I said the second advice was start now. By starting now, you build up that foundation. 5 minutes in, you're 5 minutes better than you were before you started.
Yep, love it. Powerful words, man. So, I started this podcast as most people that start their podcasts to go out there and interview the doers like yourself. There's all these quote unquote gurus out there, right? And you find out most of them have never even been in the game and done it, right? So I'm like, well, let's create a space where we go out there and interview the doers, guys like yourself that are in the trenches, that are truly building epic businesses, overcoming adversity, that are doing it, right? And create a space where people can learn and get that inspiration, that tactical information and knowledge. So with that being said, our listeners are here because that's what they're here to get, that inspiration, here to get that information, to create the life they know they want and deserve. So do you have any last words of parting advice or inspiration that you'd like to leave with them so they can go out there and create the life that they know, again, that they want and truly deserve?
Yeah, I think one of the key things is don't listen to the naysayers. Focus on yourself, even your parents, even if you're, your wife and your partners or whoever, because there's always going to be someone who says you can't do it or why you should do it. If you believe in it, go and do it and just stick with it. But know when to stop too. Know when they're like, this is not in the right direction. I've stopped many times on many things. Seth Godin talks about it as it being a cul-de-sac. It's actually also sometimes knowing when it's a dead end. Like that it's not going anywhere. I think it's about listening to your gut. We all have these gut instinct that this is something that's right for you, and go and do that. I'm not suggesting that anybody go quit their job and do something, and switch off and go grab doing something for a start and thinking that's all going to be great. I think that listening to when we say so I want to be very clear. I'm not suggesting follow your passion, right? Because that's what most people say. Follow your passion. Well, if your passion is like crocheting, that might not give you the money and that you need to live a lifestyle, right? So I think it's really important is that your passion. And I read this book, I think it's called So Good That They Can't Ignore You or something like that, by Cal Newport. And he talks about, why it's important that you might actually develop your passion after you actually been at something for a very long time. And so that, I didn't have a passion for podcasting because I didn't even know what podcasting was 5 years ago, right? I have developed the passion for podcasting through doing the podcasting. So the same thing for speaking. And I think oftentimes people say, just follow your purpose. I go, what kind of advice is that? Because I don't even know what my freaking purpose is, and then you just get stressed out by worrying about what your purpose is. And if that drives you absolutely insane, that could actually derail you. I think oftentimes we just need to remember is that Sometimes you never know what your purpose is. You could die and not know your purpose is, and you still would have made an impact. And I hope we can time for this. Well, I'll just tell you this one quick story. If you look at a honeybee, and I heard the story, it was fantastic. When you look at it, you go, if you got a honeybee, what's the purpose of a honeybee? Well, according to the honeybee, it's like to go get nectar, right? To go and, get pollen and create nectar. That's the purpose from a honeybee's point of view. But from an outside point of view, you look at a honeybee, like they're going from pollen, from flower to flower, and what they're doing their job is actually taking some pollen, sticking into their fur, which then goes to the next flower and then cross-pollinate the other flowers. Does a honeybee ever know that? Of course not. But the purpose of a honeybee is actually to cross-pollinate plants. But they don't know that, and they will die not knowing that. And sometimes our life is like that. Sometimes we think we know what our purpose is, but we have no idea the actual impact that we're actually making on people's life. I'm sure you, Joshua, you don't even know the impact that you're actually making in people's lives, because they would not have told you. They didn't spend the time to go on iTunes and review and give a comment to you. They might not have just, you hear about the ones that do, but what about all those, thousands and hundreds of thousands of people you are actually impacting in life who never took the time, which is not a bad thing, but maybe their life changed because of what you said, because you made a difference in one podcast, and you maybe listened to someone and they actually made a difference in their lives, and which means that it made an impact on that child's life, and that maybe that child becomes the president of the United States. Who knows, right? We don't know the impact, but it doesn't matter, right? So the key is just to follow what feels right, that gut instinct, and be able to put your energy and heart into it, and just keep going, because it doesn't really matter what anybody says, because you're swimming your own race.
Yeah, man, so powerful. Probably the best story analogy I've ever heard on purpose, man. So, yeah, I appreciate you sharing that, man. That's powerful, brother. And those of you guys that are watching, listen, I know in every podcast with this, you guys, but information without implementation is just the start of delusion, right? Information is a power. It's taking that information, taking action on it, that creates power in your world. So, Dr. Tham just dropped so many amazing nuggets for you guys today. Take something that you learned, take action on it right now, so you can go out there and create the life that you want and deserve. And Dr. Tham, man, this has been an amazing time. I know you're busy. Really appreciate you being here. It's been a massive honor, man. Truly, truly appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me on the show. And so it's been a blast just talking and just chatting.
Yep, absolutely. All right, you guys, thank you again, and we'll see you next time.